begin our remembrance today, we conduct a ritual now called Kriya. Kriya means breaking or rending. And it harkens all the way back to the time of the Bible, when we learn of the death of an immediate loved one, a parent, a spouse, sibling, heaven forbid a child. We would tear our clothing as a sign of our emotions in that moment. And also a signal to the community around us that we need special care and attention. And today we don't go to quite such lengths, but we do tear in the fabric that is placed here on your lapels. Normally I'd be able to assist you with it, but if you reach for the bottom, you'll be able to, for the bottom of the piece, you'll be able to tear it. And I ask everyone who wishes to repeat after me these words of blessing. Baruch Atah Adonai Dayan Ha'emet. These words simply mean we praise you, God, for you judge our lives in truth. Amen. You can be seated. Esa enai el heharim, Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, me'ayin yavo, yavo esri. Poet Merritt Malloy writes, "When I die, give what's left of me away to my children and for those who wait to die. And if you have to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give to them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known and loved. And if you can't give me away, at least let me live on in your eyes, but not in your mind. For love doesn't die, but people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away." El Harachamanu, sweet God, you've taken a beloved friend. We gather and raise our voices in prayer to the source of life itself, asking for fortitude and courage as pain and loss touch our lives. And also praising the source of life with gratitude for having given us such an extraordinary human being. Death has taken Sandy from us. She is missed already. Her sharp, acerbic wit, her goodness, her kindest intentions, her life story, her loves, each of these things, they play a precious role in our remembrance today. Each of these memories that will be reflected on today, they continue on with us. They are our spiritual immortality. But be with us, O God. Hear us and let us draw meaning from loved ones and communities of shared purpose, those gathered here today and those watching from a distance via live stream. We all look together today for kinship, for goodness, and for inspiration. Psalm 15 says, "Adonai mi yagur ba'ohalecha, mishkan bahar kochecha," God who dwells in your holy mountain, those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth in their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame on them, who scorn the lawless and honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may, do not retract, who do not exploit others, who would never take bribes. Those who live in this way, the way in which Sandy lived, they shall never, ever be shaken. Amen. Dear friends, contemporary Rabbi Chaim Stern wrote the following words, which form one of the meditations in our Shabbat prayer book. He wrote, "The light of life is a finite flame. It is radiant with warmth and beauty, but soon it fades. Its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen, but the flames dance, and yet our life burns down in gutters. There is an end to the flames. We see no more and are no more seen, but we do not despair, for we are more than a memory slowly fading into darkness. With our lives we give life, and so something of us never dies, as we move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, light and life." I share these words on purpose today in remembrance to a precious human being, a mighty and powerful light in her family, Sondra Pollack. I admit I did not get the blessing to know her during her lifetime, most of which was spent outside of our community here in Cleveland. But I will tell you this. We love some of the same people unconditionally. And having spent some time learning from each of her sons about her life and her character and what she stood for and what she wouldn't and couldn't stand, I hope that I have begun to absorb something of her essence. We gather here with Mitch and Christine, with James and his Sherry, whose lives are now altered by the loss of the matriarch of the Pollack family of origin. James and Mitch are suddenly occupying a new place in the chain of their tradition and their family responsibility. They're carrying out their mom's self-determined wishes exactly as she expressed them. Within the confines of this chapel and also the many people watching us through live stream, I want to say to you both and to your loved ones that our hearts ache with yours as you navigate a challenging time. You know what it was like to watch and experience loss together with your mom, to see her manage the various weaknesses and frailties and winds that life blew at her. And there were plenty. I pray that in the path ahead you will be able to set direction with help from family, but with your mom's moral compass as a toolkit. Lord knows if it had not been your mom, which had died today, but it was another relative, she would have been here as someone who had been trying to help you, each of you, see a brighter day ahead or memories that reflect with a shining light. Sandy was born September 20th, 1939. To give you an idea of the history surrounding that time, just 3 weeks earlier, Britain and France declared war on Germany after Hitler invaded Poland. At that time, the cost of gas here in Cleveland Heights was almost 20 cents a gallon. And that night, the heavyweight champion was crowned, a man from Detroit by the name Joe Louis. I'm trying to get across, with respect to Sandy, it was a long time ago. It was a different era. Sandy was the only child of Alexander and Ida, and she grew up in the Bronx. Sandy would attend and graduate from James Monroe High School in the Bronx until the family moved to Coney Island, and although she wasn't nostalgic or openly reflective about her childhood home life, given that she came of age in the 50s, she did have stories about doo-wop singers practicing on the street corner, having a friend a couple of years younger than her who could really sing and who became famous, a chap by the name of Neil Diamond. The late part of the spring of 1962, her life changed remarkably. She went on a double date with some guy to see The Guns of Navarone. This was a war flick starring handsome actor Gregory Peck, and going to see it that night may or may not have been the brainchild of Erwin Pollack, the cousin of her otherwise unimpressive date. Thank goodness the movie didn't interest her much, for as it turned out, Erwin and Sandy took more interest in one another that night than either the story of the movie or the company of the dates that brought them. As legend would tell it, 6 weeks later, they became married. In Erwin, Sandy found a partner born only a month and 10 days apart from her, but it was as though their souls were made for one another. They more or less recognized instantly that they were in love. Erwin sold insurance,
And Sandy began by taking care of her kids, but then, as I understand it, returned to full-time work when Mitch was around 10, developing a strong career of her own, administrating medical records and gaining accreditation and stature in that field, and what was more important to her, the respect of her coworkers and supervisors. Sandy enjoyed being good at this work and earning much of the bread for the family. She was humble, though, about all this. What she was happy about was that her and Irwin's careers allowed them at a later time to make a big move out to Arizona, where they made a new life and never again had to worry about New York City winters or ice storms. The two of them retired there, and she enjoyed personal hobbies alongside fun excursions they made to Las Vegas, to Bryce Canyon, to San Francisco, to cruises, to places that they wanted to see, like Alaska. They maintained long life friendships from back on the East Coast, but they largely stayed out where they had moved, and they were a destination for friends and family to visit. Mitch reflected with me on Monday how much he admired his mom's brightness and intelligence and her determination to surpass whatever limitations her early upbringing might have had on her. He'll speak in just a few moments, but he told me that he always imagined that if his mom had received the encouragement and education she might have wanted, she could have reached even higher in her career, leading her own enterprise, or perhaps, more likely, Mitch says, teaching English very well. James mentioned his mom's strong dedication to family. He admits she was a perfectionist, and I imagine he'll illustrate more personally what that meant. But he also recalls his mom becoming deeply engaged with the idealism of the political activities of both Robert and John F. Kennedy, and her strong feeling of wanting to be on the side of those who might otherwise be treated unfairly. She was proud, deeply proud, to see that fierce commitment to progress and equality amplified by her grandchildren, Ethan and Hannah, whose outlook on the world and actions mirror their Mimi's instincts to make the world more fair and more whole. This is not to say that she and their poppy didn't also indulge their grandkids. James told me that it would typically be right around now that the family would make their way out to pleasant weathered in August Arizona for scorching heat and the warmth and love of grandparents. Hannah wrote me an email yesterday to describe the birthday figurines that Mimi would send her every year and the memories of seeing and making blueberry challah bears, in which, as I understand it, the challah made up the arms, head, legs, and even the nose of the bear. I got to see this. Ethan and Hannah both prized these visits and the way she fell over them. They knew in their grandmother someone who loved to play games and tell stories and be a co-adventurer with them and their poppy. She admired their accomplishments as they took on leadership roles in their synagogue and becoming bat and bar mitzvah. Jewishly, she was proud of our heritage and our holidays as they manifested in celebrating their family. She wasn't a devout person or overtly serious, but like our Jewish sages, she loved to seize joyful experiences and hold them high. She could be superstitious, I'm told, and did seek to hold others to her standards for their character. But this was matched by how carefully Sandy pondered the basis and reasoning behind her own choices, and that kind of self-scrutiny has profound roots in Jewish culture. It was something that Sandy admired in others. In recent days, family friend Mike Fay wrote to me to say that he has known the Pollacks for almost 38 years and described Sandy as one of the nicest people he has ever known. He remembers going to see Paul Simon at Jones Beach with James and his parents. Sandy had a knack for getting concert tickets, including front row seats for the Moody Blues. Back when people either had to wait in line or call to get tickets, she managed her own way. Mike also adds about Sandy, she was tough, fun, but always had a smile on her face. Sandy's friend Joyce Turner posted on the online obituary, "When I think of Sandy, I am immediately surrounded by a bunch of memories of sunshine, great restaurants, lots of fun and laughter. Being with Sandy was a vacation for the mind," she wrote. It was her thing to share interests and hobbies and take you to where you could acquire supplies. I still have the earrings I made when she introduced me to jewelry making. Joyce concludes her post, by asking only that Sandy rest in peace, with the knowledge that she is well remembered and loved. In another post, Sandy's friend Marcia Larson wrote with appreciation that Sandy was her first friend when she moved from Chicago to Phoenix in 1996. She wrote, "We became instant friends the moment she opened her mouth, and I heard her sharp wit and wisecracking comebacks at the hospital where we worked. We spent many a lunch and caustic conversations, so much so that we figured out a way to share an office together. Marcia remembers fondly Sandy and her shared love of music, theater, and jewelry, and which she said she knows that jewelry making kept her in fun money over the purchases that people would make from her over the years. She's a dear friend," she wrote, "and will be missed." At this time, I think we would all agree that Sandy's humility and her sense of what was the right amount and what was too much would have her wishing that the rabbi would stop talking about her already. But before I conclude, I would be remiss if I didn't do what a rabbi is supposed to do at a moment like this, which is to briefly connect her life to a teaching in the Torah. And so I'll basically tell you that at most Jewish funerals, the most contemplated sacred verses are from Psalm 90. This psalm explains that in the eyes of the ancients, the span of our years might be 80 years and 10, or given strength, possibly 80 years, as she lived. But we should only know the best of those years include trouble and sorrow. The psalm teaches they pass by speedily and fly away, and so we are commanded to count each day, to count each precious moment, that we acquire a heart of wisdom. Heart of wisdom. Sandy Pollack's heart of wisdom is what I would call your attention to. It made her loving but overprotective. It made her talented, but also talented at pushing our buttons. Her heart of wisdom found itself most at home in the company of her beloved Erwin and in the thick of friends cracking jokes and busting up with laughter. Let us pray now that her spirit rests beside Erwin's, and that her heart of wisdom that was at the center of a worthy life filled with endeavors is ours now, a buoy to us. Let us grow and hope and smile again. I hope and pray that Sandy's life will remind us to count every single day we live, even this mournful day, as precious. Tomorrow we can love and honor her best by finding out what to extract out of life. If we do that, and if it's true that somehow there is some kind of reunion of souls after this life, she will be very eager to learn what we have found out. Let's be ready to follow her legacy. Amen. I'm going to call on Mitch now to come forward and share some memories.
Anyway, well, I had trouble. This is staying on. I hope you guys can hear me. I had trouble figuring out what to say. It was Tuesday night, and I can hear Mom kind of yelling at me for procrastinating, as she did. So I finally started this last night. What can we say about Mom? What do we say about all our mothers? Mothers are flawed, as we all are. We all know Mom yelled more than she should have, could make mountains out of molehills and molehills out of mountains, and was, of course, as I said in the obituary, and as Rabbi noted, she could be a little protective, overprotective. She wasn't a great cook either. I think I had my first good meal when I was 17 and went off to college. But Mom was a brilliant woman, smarter than most people, funnier than most people, and much more interesting than most people I know, to tell you the truth. I would love having a conversation with her really, really throughout her whole life up to the point where she was capable of having conversations. And I would always love it, whether it was shallow or deep. My mother was very, very perceptive. As the rabbi alluded to, I don't think she ever really wanted to grow up to be a wife and a mother. I think she would have preferred to have lived a life as a beatnik, studied a bit, and read a lot, maybe become an English teacher, a professor, or a journalist. But of course, back in the 1950s, early 60s, the expectation was you would get married, have kids. And to Mom's credit, she, when it happened, she embraced it. She was a good, loving mother to both James and myself. And as I said, I don't think that's what she saw herself as doing when she was a teenager, but she did it, and she did it well. She encouraged me to read too. I remember I was 6 or 7 years old. I said, "Mommy, I bet you if we put cameras on every street corner, we could stop crime." And she looked at me and said, "When you're older, read this book called 1984." And Mom knew that when you're older was an encouragement for me to do that right away. So thanks to her, I read that when I was very, very little, younger than 10, and always appreciated Mom kind of pushing me to do a little more and be a little better. She knew who I was. She knew when I needed to be pushed. She knew when I needed to be left in a corner and left alone. And she knew when I needed to be brought in the limelight. She really got me in a way that, with apologies, nobody else really will. We love our mothers because we are our mothers. With due respect to my own dad and Jay and all the dads in the world, I think we're really our mothers more than we are our fathers. And Mom left her imprint on me, and whatever Mom's flaws and strong points were, a whole lot of those filtered down to me. And when we lose our mothers, we lose a little bit of ourselves. Mom was more a theater person than a Torah person, so I came up with actually Christine and I came up with a quote that I wanted to send her off with. I don't go to funerals much. I suspect at funerals this is a pretty common quote, but Mom loved the play Our Town by Thornton Wilder, so I wanted to send her off with this. There are some things we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. But we all know that something is eternal. It ain't houses, it ain't names, it ain't earth, and it ain't even the stars, but everyone knows in their bones that something is eternal. There's something way deep down that's eternal about every human being. Bye, Mom. Wherever your eternal soul is, I hope the culture's as good as New York's, and I hope the weather's as good as Phoenix's. It's Jay's turn.
I have a lot more papers here because it's in larger print. I won't be able to read it. Just some memories about my mom. She was everything you would expect: loving, caring, dedicated, and devoted. And she was so much more. Nurturing. She had a great sense of humor, especially when it came at the expense of our dad. She loved to laugh, again, usually at the expense of our dad. As Mitch said, she was extremely smart, very crafty. She loved to create things. She loved making macrame bags with Irma Begelman, my godmother, and she owned her own jewelry business, has been said. She actually named it after me and my brother. She spent a good amount of time after retiring selling her homemade jewelry at swap meets and community yard sales in Arizona. She loved going to those every weekend. She also loved going to make her annual trips to Tucson for Tucson's world-renowned gem and mineral show. That was a highlight every year in February. Even though she wasn't a big gambler, she and Dad would love to drive up to Nevada, to Laughlin. She played the nickel slots only, so she wasn't really, a big gambler, but she just loved the excitement of that. As much as she loved me and my brother, I get the sense that we pretty much forgotten when my children, her grandchildren, were born. She loved them so much. Our trips to Arizona were the highlights of her year. And she wanted to make sure everything was perfect for Hannah and Ethan. She also had a bit of mystery to her, a little quirkiness. She tap danced as a teen, although she'd probably kill me to tell you that there's actual video that exists. Growing up, she was a big fan of the Brooklyn Dodgers. So much so that we named one of our cats Dodger. I also think living through the disappointment of being a fan of the Brooklyn Dodgers set her up for being stronger and dealing with pretty much anything thrown her way. The one connection she and our dad had was they're also fans of the New York Football Giants, and her favorite player was Sam Huff, who was in the Football Hall of Fame and probably one of the toughest and meanest linebackers in NFL history, but she found some character in him, I think, that maybe reflected herself. She also believed in some strange things and some superstitions, as were mentioned. She told me that she can only make major decisions and moves in even-numbered years. She was married in 1962. My brother was born in 1964. I was born in 1968. We made our first move as a family from Brooklyn to Staten Island in 1978. Mom and Dad moved to Arizona in 1988. So I guess it's really not a surprise that she passed away in 2020. Probably one of the oddest of the even-number years we've ever seen. So I'm glad that she was here closer to us. Thank you, Mom. Say hi to Dad. And rest easy.
We should all only be saluted by our children with such respect and sense of humor. At this time, for those that are watching via live stream, I would remind you that the family invites you to continue to share your memories, your reflections, your gestures of condolence over the coming hours, days, weeks, and months to come, as a beloved one in their family is gone from their midst, to remind them who she was. Smile with them. Laugh with them again. At this time, for those of you who are here in the chapel, I invite you to please rise for the El Male prayer. El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Otorim, Kezohar Arakia Mashirim, Et Nishmat Sondra Bat Alexander Ve'aida, Shelcha L'Olama, Bal Rachamim, Yastireha Beseter Kenafov L'Olamim, V'yitzror B'yitzrach HaChayim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachlata, V'tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava, V'nomar, Amen. God, full of compassion, eternal spirit in the universe, grant rest in your sheltering presence to Sandy Pollack, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God, you are her inheritance and she yours. And she's a good inheritance. May she rest peacefully always. Amen. We continue now with the recitation of the Kaddish prayer, which, although we offer it at moments like this in Jewish life, never actually mentions death. Only through these mysterious Aramaic words our continued faith in life and in a source of life protecting all humanity. We offer these words reflectively and with warmth, and slowly we say, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulalmei amaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpoar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, u'ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Hamakom yenachem etchem. B'toch sharav leitzon v'Yerushalayim, may God comfort you, each of you. May you comfort one another, holding one another in support, along with the mourners of all our people. Amen. this concludes our ritual here at Berkowitz.